Bulgogi BBQ Baked Potatoes, Power Bowl, and salad. I'm going to talk about Mean Girls, Green Days by the River, and Grease, some sort of documentary that I watched today, and James will probably talk more about it actually.
It could be, but this is what I'm mainly going to be talking about for the next few days or so. So it's the Bible misspelled, but it's I don't know how to pronounce that Y. Yeah, it's Afrikaans, so it's a form of Dutch, but it is quite different from Dutch. It's a bit of a challenge.
So Mean Girls, I didn't know that this was going to be a musical, and I like musicals. I don't like the modern sort of musicals, to tell you the truth, because the music
really
is not
after Jesus Christ
very
Superstar.
Yeah, the music is not great. Because honestly, if you watch a musical, you should be singing the songs afterwards. You should be, like, if you're going to a movie theater and seeing the musical, you should be leaving humming the tunes.
Yeah,
and
like
whatever,
Somewhere
and you
Over the
can't.
Rainbow.
Yeah, whatever. It's just there, right? It's automatically. It's the composers of the music and the writers of the lyrics. They have to do the job so that it's right in your brain instantly.
I'm going to wash that man
they
right
don't
out
know
of
how
my
to do
hair.
it anymore. They don't know how to do that.
Some Enchanted Evening. You know, even I know those, and I wasn't raised on those. I'm an old guy, but that was before my time.
Mm-hmm. Because they used to know how to compose music for musicals.
They kind of compose simpler stuff. I don't think they liked anything more often than ancient. Of course, they like the
that's
good
true
old
too.
cliche.
You want something that, like, even if the song can have wider range in some parts, but there has to be something that just everybody pretty much can sing along to in the song. Something catchy that it's gonna get stuck in their heads. And I just went through this. I don't have any. I can't give you any of the songs. And I like music. I like musicals. So.
Even
but I can't,
Jesus Christ Superstar, that Jesus Christ,
exactly,
that's catchy.
That's pretty catchy. You might not want to remember it. Or the Phantom of the Opera, you don't want to remember that, right?
How does that go? Can you do that again?
Please don't make me
Well, I think it's opera. Well, I guess that's the way the French say it. Well, I don't know if it's French, opera.
No, it used to bother me when I was a teenager. I was in choir. I loved singing in the choir, and so I was in choir, and the other girls, they'd be into Cats, the musical, or Les Miserables. They were really into that, or something like that. And I was just like, or Phantom of the Opera. I remember when that everyone was watching that on TV, and it was a big thing. Everyone liked it. But
how old were you when Cats came up? Was that like 8 years old?
No, I don't think I was that young. Anyway, I don't know. I can't really remember.
I can remember people at the museum being very enthused about it.
Sure, it was big when
I worked at the museum up until 1984.
Honestly, it always bothered me. Like, I thought, well, I like singing, I like music, and why don't I like these musicals? Because they're not bad. They're not composed well. The music can be composed well, and then the lyrics just suck, right? And when I was a little girl, I used to watch operas, and I thought, what bothers me about operas? And it's the repetition. You listen to it, and they're singing in a different language. Thank goodness. It must be really terrible for Italians to have to watch operas or listen to them. But so you're listening to this opera, and you hear the same thing repeated over and over and over, and it's just unnatural. It's you don't even want to remember it. You just want to leave. But anyway, so
it'd be like picture yourself on a boat on the river.
Yeah, and so
you're saying,
they drag it out longer than it should be. You get the message, and then don't drag it out. Unless you have some really snappy lines that are for people to remember, okay, then you want people to remember those lines. But even then, you don't have to repeat them very often. If they're written well, you don't need to.
Try
right?
not to repeat
people
something
are gonna
4 times. And try to have some tunes. Like Lucy in the Sky
Yeah.
with Diamonds actually has some good harmonies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they only say it 3 times each time.
But that's
These-
another
these
thing I
is
was
the chorus.
noticing about this. And mind you, my whole stack that I watched, I think this is a good stack. I'm not saying don't watch these things. I'm just saying, really, the people writing musicals nowadays, they need to redevelop some talent. I mean, a lot of knowledge, we're talking about Greece later on, and we've talked about it earlier, a lot of knowledge that the Greeks had developed, had made a part of their culture and a part of their people, was lost. But, over the years, some people have managed to hold on to enough of it and pass it down, and still people develop further from what the Greeks had started.
So some people rediscovered
go
it, like
rediscover
in Greek writing.
some
Some
good
people
musicals.
just rediscovered stuff from ground up. Like I wasn't raised on musicals or anything like that. I rediscovered some of the stuff that was in musicals, like William W.H. Auden was trying to do music kind of stuff, and people didn't take it to heart. Leonard Bernstein was trying to do musicals.
But yeah,
He did West Side Story, and no one took it to heart.
well, yeah, because it wasn't a good musical either.
You've seen
honestly.
it? Okay.
Well, I don't know. I don't care for this kind of musical. I like I mean, you have to have people with great voices, and they did in this. They really, really found some talent for singing.
Yeah,
They had chops.
I
And they're
found
lovely.
myself looking-
They're beautiful people, and they sing well, so they fit right in. But so they worked hard enough on this. They get top of the stack for sure. Anyway,
That's
I'm just
amazing.
saying-
They didn't bother with any guys on the cover.
well, it's the movie's Mean Girls. It'd
Well,
be kind of weird if they had a bunch of guys on the cover.
Well, I'm not saying a bunch
But-
of guys, but maybe minors. I don't
But anyway, it says a fun and fetch spin on a timeless teen story, and that's what they did. They redid a movie from, I guess, around my generation or something, maybe a little bit later, or more recently, I guess, for you, as a musical, and that's great. It's different than it was that way, right? And it's entertaining.
And it has Tina Fey.
Yeah.
Although
but,
we both forgot her name. I'm so embarrassed.
yeah, I know.
Because she's
But
quite good.
yeah, she is great. And there's some other people in there. I don't know what's his name. I can't remember him. His name. He's in that.
Where's he from?
And there's the
Where have
woman
I
who
seen him?
played Pam from The Office. She's
Oh
amazing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I was saying to Pauline, I think
Yeah.
she was underused in the last. God, is it almost a couple of decades?
But what I'm saying is, people who are doing musicals now rediscover what it was to do, how they made great musicals way back in the day. Back when Doris Day was singing.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love watching Doris Day or listening to her? So, Que Sera Sera. Who is not going to remember that forever, right? You
Although
want
that
to
wasn't
make
a
a musical.
I don't think that was.
Well,
Opera
I
disco.
mean, yeah, it was, but she was there and she sung the song, and you remember it.
People remember it, exactly right.
So,
She also did How Much for That Doggy in the Window. I don't know if that was.
well, and you're going to remember
catchy.
that too.
Yeah, that's right.
Even if you don't want to.
Yeah.
So, the thing is you have to remember the musical. That's the whole point. And
I think so.
honestly, it's pretty tough to write music and make it not memorable. Really. If you know half a thing about writing music and piecing together some lyrics
Yeah.
with some good rhythm behind them,
People will remember.
people will
But
remember it. So
I love the Beatles, but I hate
not
their
there.
influence.
Not
because
quite there.
everyone thought that, they're just a bunch of schmucks off the streets of Liverpool. I can write a song as good as the Beatles. No, you can't.
Anyway, so that's all I really have to say about that. As much as you know, the music wasn't to my taste and all that sort of thing. And I kept listening, I kept watching, and I thought for sure this was going to get top of the stack because I actually liked the music in this way more. It's beautiful to listen to. It's beautiful to watch. There's some lovely scenery in this. This green days by the river. The problem with it, I really didn't catch the whole story.
Well, it's in the Caribbean,
It says, you know, it's amazingly beautiful.
Is it like Jamaican music?
Trinidad, I think they were saying.
Okay, there we go. That means Trinity in Spanish. Trinidad and Tobago. I think that was a British colony.
Yeah. Superb music-laced soundtrack and a vividly colored, beautifully composed vividly colored, beautifully composed cinematography. And that's what I would say about this too. This is more about the music and just the beautiful scenery and stuff. It's lovely to watch and listen to. But the story, I don't know, they didn't do a great job. The acting, I was thinking, God, their acting is about as tough, like it's about equal to children's acting. Like it's really not great. So there were some problems that way. But still, I thought this was going to get top of the stack because when I watched this, I thought it was going to get top of the stack. Because Grease, Secrets of the Past, it's pretty good. It's only 46 minutes long, so they can't tell a lot of secrets.
It's got to be a TBS thing, right?
No.
No, it's not. It's made for TV.
Yeah. So it's a documentary, and there's some interesting stuff, but they really don't tie anything together. They started around. Yeah, they did. They jumped around too much. And 46 minutes, you can't tell a lot. Maybe tell one secret, in 46 minutes. I was starting to get interested about, they were talking about the volcanic eruption in, where was
Santorini,
it?
or Thera is maybe the more ancient name.
Santorini in Rhodes?
No,
is that right?
It's actually well away from there. But it must have affected Rhodes or something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, but it's not around Rhodes.
Okay. See, that's just it. It's funny, isn't it? Because I was thinking about this. Yeah. Well, that's probably it. They were jumping around, so I was having a hard time. I don't know enough about, anything about Greek geography. And, I know that there's a bunch of islands. Lots of islands and stuff. But I don't know anything about the particular names or anything like that. So I'm listening to this and I'm like, the volcanic eruption, and they found this yellow layer, I guess powder from the the beginnings of the eruption or something, maybe some ash or something like that. I don't know what it was, but it starts coming out, and once they said they find that layer, and the people only had 10 minutes once that started to get out, and so they're thinking, well, why were we not finding people?
It wasn't like Pompeii.
Yeah,
Pompeii
it wasn't exactly.
Just came like that.
So they're talking about that, and they don't really answer the question. You're thinking, oh, okay, I want to find the answer to that. Oh, and it doesn't come. And there's a lot. They do finish, this with computer generation, they brought back the Parthenon.
Oh yeah, like the big statue.
Yeah, and so you get to see it as it would have looked, which is nice.
Was it Elephantine, made out of ivory and gold?
Well, there was a lot of gold, and apparently the statue of Athena cost even more than the building that surrounds her to make, because there's a lot of gold on her and stuff. So anyway,
that's what made her destructible, because people would have melted her down
for the gold. Yeah,
maybe taken the ivory too. I think it might have had some ivory.
But it's good to think about Athena, really, and how the Greeks, I don't think they really had anything against women or anything. Athena is if anything, the Greeks love knowledge more than anything, and here she's it, right? So I don't see the Greeks as being anti-feminist or anything like that. It's just they pointed something out about Athena, that she didn't marry and didn't have children.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe that's what, I mean, they see her as having great wisdom because she was able to focus on that rather than having to take time taking care of a husband, having to take time taking care of children. And it's just like, well, what are your values? And you only have so much time.
She was maybe a bit of a warrior
spend on things.
Too.
So well, that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, and I don't know what feminists would think. She wasn't even born of a woman, right? She was born
out of his head. So yeah.
The king of the gods.
So you're going to talk now, I guess, about the Bible and maybe
I'm going to talk
about Greece.
Thing a little bit too. So I'm going to emphasize what Pauline said about the jumping around. About 20 minutes, 10.
Yeah, no problem. 15 at least.
Okay.
15.
At any rate, she was saying was
little less.
Jumping around. You know, it went from Santorini right to classical Athens. So they're dating Santorini, the big explosion. I think it probably went through several explosions. I guess this is the last one or the major one. They dated to 1650, and the next thing you know, you're in classical Athens starting 510 BC. That's a jump of more than 1,100 years. Oh, wow. And you're jumping from an island to the mainland. Now, I wanted to emphasize that it's hard really to generalize about the Greeks because communication isn't like what it was in my granddad's time either. Because, there were railways. He was born in, I believe, something like 1882. Railways. So what you had, the equivalent of Greece back then was, let's say, Western Europe. You had nation states. Back in the time of Greece, about all you could hold together in something like democratic fashion would be a city-state. Nation state, city-state. But it was basically the same phenomenon. Only in the 19th century Europe, it was more expanded. And so, again, with the exception of Sparta, which had kind of like a little empire on the mainland of Greece, or really peninsular part of Greece, the southern part of Greece. The Peloponnese, I think is what they call it. It really means something like the island of Pelops. It's not really an island, it's a half island, as some people style it. Is the Germans have insert half island. If I'm not mistaken. If I got it wrong, you speak German way better than me. Read it, whatever. I apologize. Try it. At any rate, peninsula might mean something like half island, I'm not sure. Anyway, so it's hard to generalize about the Greeks. The Athenians loved learning. The Corinthians were good with artwork and stuff like that. They came up with one of the three basic pillar styles, or capital styles, I think is what they call it, the things at the top of the pillar. But they were maybe more into trading. The Athenians were definitely into trading. But they were really good at art and, like visual art, really good at plays. There were other places that may be better at writing poetry. And the Greeks were good at philosophy, or so we're told. In some ways, I prefer the philosophy that preceded the classical philosophers. I'm not a big fan of Aristotle, and particularly Socrates. I think the only philosopher
You were going to talk about how they'd gotten things wrong about the Spartan.
Well, I think about the Spartans or about Santorini.
Well, you were going to talk about how they were that play that they were doing in there, or something.
Oh yeah, Lysistrata. I'm going to have to check and see because they were saying it was anti-war, and I think it was more like. I suspect Aristophanes was a conservative, like almost every classical writer from Greece that's been preserved was a conservative. In other words, they didn't believe in democracy. I think the one major exception was Euripides. Now, in terms of philosophy, I suspect, what's his name? Not Empedocles, I don't know why I'm thinking about that. He came before those classical guys. I'll think about it, or I'll think of it a couple of days from now. But the guy who came up with the idea of well, it was picked up by Lucretius and so on and so forth. And the idea was basically, like you live in the here and now. You try to, in some ways, capitalist theories come from it. You try to increase your utils. That's an economic term, isn't that amazing? So your utility, well, I guess it'd be marginal utility when you're taking something on. But, I don't think Aristophanes was necessarily a pacifist or something like that. I think he was basically saying to the Athenians, just surrender, to the Spartans. I think, like one of the shows Pauline was watching, I did a take that I'd never heard of, but it made absolute sense. Socrates was encouraging the youth of Athens maybe to surrender to the Spartans. I don't know. I think he was assassinated. Well, he was forced to drink hemlock, as the story goes, because he was supposedly corrupting youth. And if you're telling youth to surrender to the Athenians, I'm going to have to check to see if you surrender to the Spartans, and you're an Athenian, you're a bad guy. I don't think you deserve death, but probably to be kicked out. Ostracism. Awful, awful. So many Plato was an awful guy. His Republic is awful. It's kind of like ideal societies. Seems to be largely based on the Spartan approach to things. Really, really disgusting. Bad, bad guy. And Aristotle, he got so many things wrong about nature. I don't know how scientists can see him as being a big inspiration. I suppose he was better. He wasn't like an idealist like Plato. Plato was a nut bar when it came to idealism. At least Aristotle tried to operate on a scientific basis. How much time, Father?
Yeah, a little more.
Anyway, I was going to mention, so I'm going to have to check up about Aristophanes. He's about the only comedian, I think, that was preserved from the classical tradition, Greek tradition. The first two playwrights in the Roman tradition, quite early, maybe 200 BC roughly. One was a little bit later than that. Terence and Plautus were comic writers, so it's the Latin tradition is a little bit different. And I'm going to mention the dating of Santorini. They say 1650 BC, and they're going in terms of ice cores. How are you going to tell a particular signal in an ice core actually came from Santorini? You see what I'm saying? That's 1650 BC. That's Santorini. And I'm going, I don't know. See how they're jumping to conclusions there?
Well, one thing that I would like to mention about this is the, what is it called? They were doing, see, I should have prepared some notes. I'm not good at just flying with things. Remember, what I was interested in was how they were looking at, they were trying to find, I guess, remnants of pottery or whatever, different things like that, artifacts underneath 60 feet under the ground with viewing from satellites, right? They can actually look at things underneath the ground. And there's no point in digging things up unless they're the areas at risk of, if it's all going to get destroyed or something, then I guess you have to.
Yeah, they do rescue kind of archaeology that way. It's important here, for example, with indigenous sites and stuff like that, because there's so much crappy development happening and so on and so forth. Now understand, there'd be more and more if we let more and more people in from all over the world. One person recently wanted 100 million people in Canada, 60 million more. Oh, that's going to be great for indigenous sites. You see, that's one of the problems with people who are hanging around in the left wing. They can't resolve all their stupid priorities. Indigenous rights have priorities over people coming in from all over the world, and more colonizing and imperializing, frankly.
And well, the land shouldn't be, the cities shouldn't be expanding. They should be growing up and growing down, but they shouldn't be growing out.
Especially when you look at this southern mainland of BC, those cities shouldn't be expanding there. The cities in southern Ontario shouldn't be expanding there because that's prime agricultural area for Canada, for the United States, big margin. But anyway, go on.
So yeah, that's
yeah,
all.
The one thing is you might not be able at this point in time to find literary texts, let's say carved in stone, or you know what I'm saying, to the point where you'd be able to decipher it.
Sure, yeah,
But,
that's true.
One day they'll be able to.
Yeah.
And maybe it's best to just leave that.
Leave it until they get to that point.
What they're doing in the Middle East is stunning. Of course, it's got to be rescued because it's rescue stuff. The folks there, it's not their native religion. The native religions in most of those places are Christian, but they really don't believe in tombs, and they don't believe in big monuments. One of the worst things they could say about one of their leaders is Pharaoh. So I'm telling you right now, the pyramids are slated for the pit. You know, they are going to get destroyed by some stupid idiot from the Middle East. So that stuff's got to be dug up. But what has been happening in the Middle East, you know, like you've got guys strutting around in archaeology saying, we do scientific archaeology. I'm saying your dating system is wrong. How can you, what's happening is people are looking at different layers and they're interpreting, you know, like in Israel. Right now, you got people who are focusing on the Israelites, Judahites, the predecessors of present-day Jews, and they're going, you know, like, okay, we're interpreting this way, and then you got people who are interpreting according to the Egyptian stuff, and they're going, no, they're, you know, King Solomon, Jerusalem around the time of King Solomon was like a cow corral. Okay, so what they're doing is just digging around. Both sides are misinterpreting, and it's basically just more vandalism.
Yeah, but 60 feet under the ground.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. I can remember one person I knew around the time of Osama bin Laden, when he was supposedly hiding in a cave, wherever. 2 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah. And they were saying, they'll never get him in a cave. And I said, you've got ground penetrating radar, come on.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. I don't know. Some people just don't understand. This is a person with a PhD and stuff like that.
And I can't see why they couldn't use ground penetrating radar and combine that with face recognition software and just find anybody, no matter where you're hiding, right? I mean, honestly, not that I'm paranoid. I don't care if they penetrate my house and basement and find me, whatever. Who?
So
who's gonna care?
You know, like if they really cared to wipe out those guys in ISIS, they would.
Yeah. Anyway, you have a minute.
I think they didn't want to alienate the Turks. You know, ultimately, the Turks turned the leader of ISIS in. I think they informed the Americans or something like that, and the Americans wiped them out. But the guy was like within a kilometer or two of the Turkish border, and the Turks have said, "We don't want you here. You think you're the big boss. You want to be caliph. Our leader wants to be caliph. We're not gonna wipe you out because that's bad. That'll be bad news for us in the Muslim world. So we'll get the Americans to do it, and we won't mention it. We will whistle on. Anyway, enough for now."
Okay.